Hey everybody, and welcome back to Storytime with JRP. We're continuing our book, Laurence Grey, Secret of the Lost Roanoke Colony, and we're currently in chapter 28. So if you're just joining us, head back to chapter 1 so you don't miss any crucial details. So a brief recap of what happened in the previous chapter. Laurence Grey went back in time to the year 1673 to talk to Ben Folger, the grandfather of Benjamin Franklin, who has alien data, the first person to receive it. And amazingly, Mr. Folger knew exactly who Laurence Grey was. Does he know more than he's letting on? Well, we'll find out now in chapter 28 titled Interesting Discussions. This shocked Grey to the core. How the heck did Peter Folger know who Grey was? And how did he know that Grey was from the future? Cars weren't invented yet in this time period, much less airplanes, and certainly not time machines. Folger was staring at Grey the whole time Grey was thinking this through, so Laurence offered a quick response. Sir? Well, that's who you are, right, lad? Said Folger. Grey, 35, was a bit tiffed at being called lad, but compared to the old age of Folger, which Grey guessed to be around 70, Grey was certainly much younger. Yes, sir, that's me, but how did... Folger chuckled. Come, let's talk about this over a hot cup of porridge. Once again, Jack Larrabee and Grey's son, Jason, were in a room together with little hope of escape. Because Jason was able to pick the simple lock that kept them locked up the first time, the SWAT and the FBI turned them over to the NSA division of Area 51. The NSA had much better prisons, waiting rooms, than the rest of Area 51. The room Jack and Jason were held in had a hand scanner attached to a 2-foot thick door so that no one unauthorized could get in. Jack and Jason spent most of their time in silence, making use of the couches, beds, and magazines in the room. Jason broke the latest round of silence and said, You know, Jack, it just occurred to me. What? Asked Jack. Jason put down his magazine. Remember General Sheldon talking to us about Roanoke? You asked him how he knew all about it, and instead of responding, he just evaded the question and started telling us about the USB for the alien website? Jack frowned. Yeah, I think that is strange, isn't it? The nerve of that guy. Back in 1673, Grey and Folger sat at a wooden table with steaming hot cups of porridge. Folger began, Now, I know some things all about this, but there's some pressing details that someone else could tell you more accurately. A young man stepped into the room. Grey guessed he was about 25. Folger explained, I'd like you to meet your future version of your son, Jason Grey. Grey was shocked, stunned. This man was just a manly image of the 14-year-old Jason. The man stepped forward. Dad, it's me, Jason. I know it may be hard for you to understand, but I really am your son. I'm 24 years old. How old is the other me in your time? Grey was beyond words. First it was Area 51, then aliens, then time travel, and now alternate realities? How much more can one take? 14, he managed. Jason smiled. My rebel years. I was such a handful then. Anyways, I have an idea of why you came. It's the Roanoke Colony, isn't it? Grey just smiled. With all the surprises, why not just pile one more on? Yes, that's why I came. But how... It's a long story, interrupted Jason. One which I must tell you in order for you to understand. They moved to the living room. Jason began. First, Dad, can you give me a brief summary of your last couple years? Most likely, it's very different from my own timeline. Certainly, said Grey. It all began when I drove to the library for work. After about an hour later, Laurence Grey finished retelling his life's history of the past 2 years to his alternate reality older son. As Grey's history speech progressed, Jason's demeanor went down and down until by the end of Lawrence's speech, he looked utterly depressed. Laurence had to ask, What's wrong, son? Jason shook his head. It all makes sense now. Back at the NSA division of Area 51, Jack Larrabee and the much younger Jason continued their solitude. Hey, is it just me, began Jack, or does General Sheldon have, like, a strange accent? Jason shook his head. It's not just you. I know my dialects well, and people haven't had that type of English accent since... Since what? Prodded Jack. Jason took a breath. Since colonial times. Back in 1673, Grey asked of Jason, What makes sense? Jason frowned. Your whole recent timeline is much different than mine. Adding it to my experiences can only mean one thing. What, Jason? Well, your whole situation with the government. It's my fault. Grey was completely confused. I don't understand. So, what discrepancies were there between your reality and mine? Jason sighed. It's more than just a discrepancy, Dad. More like two completely different timelines. Gray nodded. Okay, explain. Jason took a deep breath and began. The differences in our timeline began when you discovered Area 51 website. See, for my reality, you never found that. In fact, we continued our regular lives for the rest of my childhood. You became chief of your Hartford, Connecticut police force, where we lived, and I studied at Harvard to become a historian. After I got a job as a historical advisor at a nearby library, my life began to change. Maybe it was fate, or simply by chance, but during some study time, I found a book about Roanoke. I became fascinated with the mystery of Roanoke's disappearance. It soon became an obsession, I admit. I soon got to a point where I had to know what happened to Roanoke. I couldn't help myself. I gathered a couple friends, and together we broke into the Groom Lake facility. We did it for one purpose only, the hope of finding a time machine. Our crazy idea was that, just maybe, I could take a time machine back in time to find out what happened to the colony. Well, our invasion of Area 51 was not a quiet one. Half the building knew we were there in 5 minutes. One by one, my friends were captured as we desperately searched for what we knew had to be there. And finally, I found it. It was the body-encompassing sphere type. I pressed the time dials just before the feds caught me, and I was off. I time-traveled to multiple time periods until I hit the time of Mr. Folger here. Well, he told me everything, including your next clue, Dad. Unfortunately, I was unaware that one of the criminals set to be locked in the soon-to-vanish Roanoke colony had escaped. Even less did I know that he was standing just outside the room Folger was talking to me in. Well, as I was talking, I heard my time machine start. I ran to the window just in time to see the man using it vanish, along with the machine. And Dad, he looks just like a younger version of Phil Sheldon. Okay, let me get this straight, began Laurence Grey, who was sitting in a cottage with Peter Folger in 1673 while talking to Gray's son from an alternate reality. You're saying that these past 2 years are all your fault? Can you summarize what you just said to me? Because I really don't get it. Jason looked downcast. If I hadn't been so interested in Roanoke, I wouldn't have gone back in time, and the time machine wouldn't have been stolen. Oh, that's right, responded Gray. You said the guy who stole the time machine looked kind of like General Sheldon? Do you happen to have a picture? Jason nodded. Actually, yes. I took one with my iHollow 16. Gray sputtered. The iHollow what? Jason smiled. I'm from the future, Dad, remember? That's the kind of phones they have now. Gray grimaced. And I thought 2014 phones were advanced. Jason laughed. Okay, look, let's get back to my story. Yes, he looked just like yours, Sheldon. Here's a picture. Jason's iHollow 16 beholded a holographic image of what really did look like a young version of Sheldon. This version was thinner, sporting a mustache, and wearing peasant 1600s clothes. Yep, that's him, confirmed Gray. He looks about 20 years old there, and now he's about 50 in my time. Jason's eyes widened. All the pieces are falling into place. You mentioned that Sheldon said the USB, which contained the alien website, was put on the internet by someone sometime in the 80s. That someone was probably none other than Sheldon himself. Gray was astonished. Of course, I knew he had a weird accent. Peter Folger spoke up. It says on the criminal list that his real name is Peter Swanson. I'm sorry, I meant to say Philip Swanson. Jason snapped his fingers. That's just one more confirmation. No one has that last name anymore. Gray nodded. Okay, so we're definitely confirmed that it's Sheldon. But why would he put a Descendants Access Only website on the internet? Why would he steal the USB at all? And what did you mean by that he was a criminal set to be locked in Roanoke? Folger stepped in. That's where I come in. We couldn't just give innocent people to the aliens, but the aliens demanded people in their experiment. So we gathered all of our colony's criminals and locked them up in Roanoke, while the good townsfolk were moved to a different colony. That all makes sense, said Gray. If he had to sacrifice humans, it might as well be criminals. But how did he escape? Folger shook his head. Nobody knows. All we know is that he was missing from our latest colony head count. Okay, said Gray, but that doesn't answer my other question. Why? What's General Sheldon's motive for accessing the alien website? Was it that he was close friends with the other criminals or something? Jason spoke up. That may be part of it, yes, but mostly we believe it was something else. We think the aliens put something in the colony to serve as a trap to whoever finds it. However, Sheldon may think that the exact opposite, that there is some sort of alien reward in there. Gray thought a moment. Well, that explains his motive, but it's illogical. He's not a descendant of Folger, so he can't access the USB on his own. He needs to find a descendant. Jason snapped his fingers. Exactly, and that's why he put it on the web. He knew somebody would find it that was related to Folger. It took 30 years, but he finally found you and the other me. Gray started to understand. So he's not interested in discovering colony descendants. He just wants that supposed treasure. Jason nodded. Yep. When you broke into their Area 51 website, you entered your email address, as you told me. That instantly gave them your name, which traced right back to Folger. So when he had you arrested, I'm sure he didn't care one bit that you broke into their website. He found the key to his prize. Gray shrugged. So he might get rich. So what? At least I'll become free. Jason shook his head. No, Dad, slow down. I've taken the time machines to other alternate realities where Sheldon found the colony years ago. Because of that, World War III started, and most of the world is in nuclear wake, and therefore uninhabitable, and half of the world's population is dead. What Sheldon finds at the colony is not a reward, Dad. It's a trap. You must stop him from finding it at all costs. Gray solemnly nodded. I'll do my best, but Sheldon will be expecting a clue of some sort when I return. Jason walked to a desk. I'll make one up. He'll never know the difference. If you say so, replied Laurence Grey to his alternate reality older son, Jason. He turned to Peter Folger. So, Pete, how much do you know about the alien trap or reward housed in Roanoke? Folger sighed. To be frank, Laurence, quite more than I've told either of you. The extraterrestrials told me many things about it. They told me that there's 2 giant sheds on the outskirts of the colony. One has incredible rewards, the specifics of which are unknown to me. But they did say that it included something that will make the criminals that are inside more willing to submit to custody. The other giant shed is a massive weapons cache, all of an alien origin, that the criminals will somehow know how to operate. The aliens set up only one of those sheds to open up. Miraculously, if the person is an honest explorer, this first shed will open up, and he will receive the reward. If the person is just out for glory or fame, the second shed will open. Jason's eyes widened. It makes sense now. That's why in the other alternate reality, World War III happens. The alien's shed knew that Sheldon was only out for his personal gain, so the second shed opened. And I guess the descendants of all the colony's criminals escaped, since Sheldon found them. And since no one but they can operate the superior alien technology, it's no surprise that their little band caused World War III. Who knows what the criminals had? Probably force fields and vaporizer guns. This made Gray speechless. Finally, the secret of the Roanoke colony was revealed. Gray turned to Jason. So, the clue? Ah, yes, here you go, replied Jason, who handed Gray a paper, which the former had just wrote on. Gray shot Jason an incredulous look. You wrote, search the hole in the desert where space meets the land, find a cave, and your wealth will be grand? I don't think Sheldon will believe that. Jason laughed. Hey, who are we to question the mind of aliens? Gray laughed with him. I guess so. What did you mean by hole in the desert? Jason grinned. The Arizona crater, of course. A hole in the desert caused by something from space. Wow. After all these years, we finally know the secret of the Lost Roanoke Colony. The secret is that there are criminals housed there, still in an unknown location, but that there are 2 alien sheds, one with the reward, one with a big load of weapons that the criminals will use to take over the world. And only one with a pure heart will get the reward, which obviously Sheldon doesn't have, and that's why they need to stop him before he finds it. Well, what's going to happen next, guys? It's only going to get crazier from here. Well, you'll find out tomorrow, guys. All right? I'll see you then.